Hmm. Hello, hello, and welcome. Let's see, it is Wednesday, September 14th, and I have not put my devices on Do Not Disturb. So I'm going to do that just now. There we go. Oh. Hmm. Thank you for your flexibility today. I ended up pushing this call back just slightly because I was still feeling a little bit just spent. Let's just say we'll call it spent. I was just feeling a little spent, just a little overdrawn. I taught last night as a guest teacher in somebody else's space, and it was great. It was wonderful. And then I had a healing session this morning, and I was like, whew. Now I get to talk about the meaning of life, like why we're here. Just all seemed a little much. So this is, a reminder. This was a reminder for me, and I hope it's a reminder for you that like things can shift. Things can move. Things can rearrange, and it's totally okay. And nobody really minds, if it becomes some sort of chronic issue where you're completely unavailable whenever you say you're going to be available. I mean, that's another thing. Cross that bridge when you get there. But life happens. And honestly, most people are so understanding. And certainly all of you are so understanding. But I know that for myself, things shift, things change. And isn't that just like a wonderful illustration of what we're talking about today, which is this idea that we're here on a ride, right? And we're here on this ride together. And gosh, there's so many things that I can cover, and I'm just going to try to start at the very, very beginning. The very beginning. How on earth we got here, and credit where credit is due. I learned a lot of this from my teacher. So you've heard me talk about my root teacher. And my root teacher, the one who really initiated me into a lot of this, initiated me in a more deeper expression of my gifts and actually very much accelerated these things. I often joked that we did like 20 years of work together in I don't know, it was less than 2 years, really just a year. We did like 20 years it was intense. It was intense, not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. But I've never been faint of heart. So I did a lot of work in a very short amount of time with a very special teacher who came in unveiled. And so you hear me sometimes talk about the veil. The veil is what separates us in our awareness from everything else. So, I also talk about how we are multidimensional beings and we exist in, multiple places, and we've existed in multiple places. And what we know now about time based on people's work in quantum physics is that there might be infinite dimensions, and it could be that everything is happening all at once, and that time and space are constructs that exist here that serve us in sort of seeing a linear sense of time, but that may not exist anywhere else. That might just be a construct here. So that said, if somebody comes in unveiled, what that really means is that they are aware of all of what I mentioned in a much more conscious way than we are. Because most humans think that they are just as they are right in that moment. They don't realize their divinity. They don't realize their multidimensionality. And they have no memory of what came before or what might come after. There's only that moment. And most of them think that they are just their thoughts and feelings, or what happened to them in the past in this lifetime. And that is the absolute narrowest view of reality that you can take. And that is how I'm hearing it's not 99%. There's going to be a lot more channeling in this call, by the way. It's not 99%, but I'm not hearing like a, really? 96%? I was hearing it was more than 90, and then I was like, could we be more specific just for fun? And the number we seem to be settling on is 96. Yikes. So 96% of humans have that extremely narrow view. It's like if you put a paper bag over your head and cut like the tiniest little pinhole through which you could just barely perceive light and color and sound and like reality. But everything else, all the rest of like your periphery, all of everything else was blocked. That is how narrow that view is. There is so much more. I say this all the time. Whatever it is, like the biggest view you can take of the nature of reality, there's more. Double it, triple it, quadruple it, 100 times it. It's infinite. And our minds, our human like bodies, our human brains are not built to hold on to that kind of knowledge. So this, fair warning here, this may blow you out a little bit today. This might be kind of a lot. So I'm going to suggest that if that is the case, and if you start feeling a little like, ooh, pause, take a break, go for a walk, ground. This does not have to be watched in one session, right? So most of us are veiled. There are varying degrees of how veiled you are. Some people, in fact, most people, are extremely thickly veiled, as I've described, and have an extremely narrow view on reality here. My root teacher came in unveiled, and this is her book. C.W. Isaac is her name. Well, it's her publishing name. Her first name is actually Wendy. And I'm allowed to call her that now. There was a time where she was like, I don't know how public I want to be. So this is the book. You can read it yourself. My Calling, My Quest. This is the book of truth. There's always a copy on my desk. It's like an anchor point. And so that's my teacher. She came in unveiled. So credit where credit is due. A lot of my understanding of this has been shaped by her work, has been shaped by her teaching, has been shaped by literally sitting with her, like sitting at her feet, sitting next to her and asking questions and listening, which I did in a very intensive way for, let's see, I met her in 2014. We didn't really get to know each other much better until sometime in 2015. And then her personal frequency was so intense, I could only kind of come in and out. And we talked maybe like every now and again. Then it was like once a month, then it was a little bit more. Then I ended up doing some extremely intense work, as I said, with her pretty much throughout all of 2016. And we talked at that point a lot, at certain points almost every day. We were doing a lot of writing and work together. we had a project that we did together, and then I came to a choice point where I had to choose what my existence was going to be. I had to choose whether I was going to, at the time it felt like, accept my highest calling, which was to be way more divine than human, way more there than here, if you will. And that felt like my highest calling at the time. It felt like, oh, I should really probably say yes to that. But I was warned that if I did do that, I would be sacrificing my ability to have a more human existence here. And I would probably sacrifice my ability, almost certainly sacrifice my ability to be a mother and to have a family. And I think you all know what I chose. So I had time to think about it. And I had already been told that I was going to have to choose between my career in the performing, like my growing career in the performing arts, in modeling and in acting, and spiritual work. That was already made clear to me. It was like, you're going to have to make a choice, and spiritual work is your higher calling. You will not be happy with the same amount of depth and longevity in performing arts as you will be doing spiritual work. I'd already made that choice. And then I came to another choice point with this teacher, and it was like, you have to choose just how deep you want to go here. Let me just adjust this. Thank you. So it was a question of just how deep I wanted to go in this work. And it was made clear to me that, like, if I did not choose to become a mother, there would be a part of me that regretted that till the end of my days. And there would be a part of me that would always wonder. And students are not forever. You know, students are special, and I get to like mother and nurture people in the way that I do. And it's not the same as being like an actual mother and having birthed a child. So for me, that was a very clear choice, and I made that choice. And I did have moments where I regretted it, but here I am, and here we are. So, you know, I didn't really intend to tell that whole story and tell that whole backstory, but for some reason it just feels important to give you context, to help you understand where I received this knowledge and where this knowledge comes from, and why I believe it to be true and why I believe it to be accurate. And that said, you don't have to agree with me. There might be points in this talk that you don't agree with, and that is okay. Because I am not, like, what I believe to me is true, right? And there's always going to be a limitation on it for each one of us, because everything is true, little asterisk, to the degree that you can perceive it. There's always more. So you should always be asking, you know, like, if you're interested in learning more, if you're interested in expanding, if you're content as you are, don't worry about it. But if you are on this journey of expanding beyond exactly where you're at, and you feel that hunger that, like, there's more, then that's the question to ask. Like, what is the more? And to throw that out to spirit, to throw that out to God, the universe, whatever you call the divine intelligence that I believe is behind and within and without, you know, in every molecule. To constantly be asking that question does produce answers. And the answers may not be what you expect. But to me, everything, it's not that I have ever really been proven wrong per se. It's just that the more I go and the further I travel, the further I go, the more I learn, the more I expand. So it's not that my worldview or my beliefs have necessarily been proven wrong. It's just that there's more. Things expand. It's like, oh, this is true, but this is only part of the story. And I want to share with you this really famous parable that you probably already know. And it's a really famous one, and you'll probably laugh. But so there's this story that exists where there are, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5. Let's say 4. There's 4 blind men, and they all come upon an elephant. And each of the blind men starts feeling a different portion of the elephant, trying to decide what on earth this thing is. One man is feeling the elephant's trunk, and they're like, this must be a snake. This creature is long and flexible and bendy and cylindrical. And then one at the rear end of the elephant says, no, 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 no. It can't be a snake. This creature, well, I'm not sure what it is, but it's long and skinny and it moves fast and it swishes in the air. Clearly, it's feeling the elephant's tail. Then another one is feeling the side of the elephant. Like, no, 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 no. This must be a rock. This is rough and solid and big. I think this is just a rock. And then the 4th blind man is feeling the elephant's feet. Oh, that was interesting. A piece of dust that was feeling the elephant's feet. Like, well, surely, no, no, no. This thing is solid. It is tough. It feels like perhaps some sort of dinner plate, or you get the idea. Each of the blind men is feeling a different part of the animal, the elephant, and each one has a different experience. Each one has a different story to tell, and each one in his own way is correct, and yet they are not getting the full picture. They're each examining a different aspect of the elephant and drawing a conclusion from there and arguing with the others based on their each one limited view of what this thing actually is. And this is a parable that people often share about, like, how you never know what a whole situation is and blah, blah, blah. I would expand that all the way out and say, we never know what all of eternity, what all of the true nature of reality actually is. We can only see in part. And some of us are walking around entirely blind, or as I said, like the teeniest pinhole of data. Some of us have a broader perspective. Our veils are thinner. We've been allowed to get further and wider glimpses of the all that is, of the nature of reality. And then some people come in and they actually really can. They're unveiled. They can perceive all of it, in as much as their human form will allow them to hold at any certain time. So, I should also add that, like, while my teacher is a pretty great encyclopedia, she retains nothing, because the human brain can only hold so much. And in order to not completely fry her circuits, she can only hold so much data at a time. So she's at once like extremely brilliant and an encyclopedia of the nature of reality, and forgetful. Like, she'll forget what an answer is that she gave you 2 days ago. So one of my jobs when I was working with her was to write things down, was to ask questions and write and take dictation. So there's always more. Each of us are limited, and there's always more we can learn. There's always more we can see. So I share that because what you perceive may not be wrong and may not be incorrect, but it might be limited. And isn't that a relief? For me, it is. What if what if people walking around could simply understand that there was more available to them, but at the same time, they didn't need to be ashamed for what they didn't know or didn't already perceive, because they're not wrong, they're just limited. In the same way that most of us, I can't say everyone, but most of us would never shame a child for not knowing things. Like, would you walk up to a little toddler who's just learning colors and they're looking at the color yellow and they don't know what it is called? Would you walk up to them and be like, "You fool, how do you not know this already? This is yellow. It's obviously yellow." No, nobody in their right mind would do that or say that, because because it's unnecessary. We understand that they have a limited perspective. We understand that they are learning. We understand that they will learn and they will grow, and we need to be patient. And because we possess greater knowledge, greater sight, we know all our colors, we can slow down and come to the level that they are and encourage them to expand. And eventually, yes, they learn their colors. They know how these things work. They learn, wow, there's many different shades of yellow, and yellow and blue together make green. And there's so many shades of green. And look at all the green things. This is very much how consciousness works. There are far wiser, far more aware figures, beings, let's say, beings that exist, and their sole job is to help educate and enlighten those of us who want to see more, who want to learn more, who don't know what the color yellow is yet. And we're sitting and going, what color is this? I don't know. I've never seen it before, or I can't remember the name. And they're there to say, that's yellow. Did you know yellow and blue together make green? And take us each step of the way. So there's some truly wonderful beings that exist out there who have devoted their entire lives, which is to say, we're all eternal. These are beings that have been designed and incarnated, which is still, again, not quite right. They haven't necessarily incarnated. They've been created, and they've chosen to devote their entire eternal existence to assisting in the expansion of understanding, to exist in the expansion of creation. Now, if that doesn't make you so, and maybe it's just because I've met these beings, I don't know, but these beings exist. I know them, you know them too, even if you haven't really one-on-one met them. Archangels are a class of these beings. And I mean, if that doesn't make you just so tremendously blown out with gratitude and overwhelming love for existence, I don't know. There's a lot of things like that really blow me out in extreme gratitude and extreme humility, which oftentimes people say, I think humility gets a bad rap, where people talk about, humility in a sense of being small or being less than. That's not it at all. I think true humility is understanding your place in the greater scheme and understanding that you are at once significant and so small. That there's so much further that you can go, and further you can learn and expand and grow. And yet everything is just perfect and wonderful exactly as it is right now. And you are so special and so loved and so unique, just as you are right there in the moment. This is why we did the whole talk previously on holding paradox, because there's a lot of paradox in here. And this is why I don't, this is also why I don't organize things. I don't know what I'm necessarily talking about month to month. It's given to me. There's a greater intelligence at play here. This is not Christiana the human who has like a genius and organizing everything. No, no, no. There's a greater intelligence at play, and I am in service to and devotion to that, just as I am in service to and devotion to each one of you and that part of you that said yes to being here, to expanding. So we're all here together. Okay, so that's a lot of like backstory and some framework. Let's start at the beginning. So how on earth did we get here? I want you to imagine for a second, if you can, and this is something that is hard to imagine, so give yourself so much grace today in particular, because I'm sharing some stuff that is, first of all, it's almost impossible to put into words, and I'm going to do my best. Second of all, there's so much that gets lost in translation, and your imagination can't really fully hold this and grip it. So we're just all going to do our best and give ourselves a lot of grace here. So I want you to imagine the biggest thing, the biggest energy that you can imagine. Not your human idea of what you think of when you think of God. We're not talking about some old dude in the sky wearing robes and handing down judgments, which is a very Western idea of who God is. And I'm not even talking about like any ideas about Mother Earth, right? When I've talked about the feminine, when I talk about Mother Earth, even when I talk about the creation of this Earth and this planet, still none of that is big enough. Bigger, 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 bigger. So I want you to imagine the biggest presence of energy that you can, like at the very top. So if you imagine, there's a picture here. So in a sense, it's like the very top of the pyramid, but not in the way we think of a pyramid where the very top of the pyramid is so small. In a way, I think it's better to think about a beam of light, a beam of white light hitting a prism, hitting a crystal or a prism, where it's immediately burst forth into this full spectrum of color that you could not see in the single white beam of light. But each of those colors was contained in the white light. This is kind of how source energy looks like, feels like. This is the closest approximation I can really come up with, is that there is at the very top of existence, if you will, again, it's like the biggest thing you can imagine as like the smaller being that you are here. And yet it is that pure white light that can fractalize, it's a word, fractalize and split apart into this full prism, this full spectrum, this full kaleidoscope of color, except it's so much more than color, right? It's sound, it's movement, it's feeling, it's completely intangible stuff that doesn't fit into words. It's energy, it's essence, it's frequency. So in the beginning, there was that. I don't know what came before that, nor do I know where that source, where the all that is, where that came from. There are some things that are maybe just unavailable. I don't know. But what I do know is that that energy being what it is, it had a desire to create. And in fact, that energy could even be best described as the largest desire and potent energy of creation that is. Because it is from that everything else sprang into being. I told you this is it's hard to hold because it is so very big and it's so very out there, and we do not have language or even sensation that is enough to hold it. But I've been to this place and I've seen it. It has blown me out. It's more than I can even begin to describe. So we'll just keep doing our best. So this energy was just like infinite potential, infinite creation, infinite light, infinite energy, bigger than not just our universe, but all known universes. What we know now about the universe, if you've ever seen a map, it's like we are so not alone. We are so not alone. We will find out more concretely about that, I think, in the years to come. I think in my lifetime, in your lifetime. But putting that to the side, we know that we are in a galaxy that we call the Milky Way. And this galaxy is one of uncountable other galaxies. And as far out as we've been able to zoom, just from an astronomy perspective, there is like a center point of the universe that we are all kind of orbiting and yet expanding from. So the Big Bang Theory is still true. There was this moment, and I think it's even well captured in the book of Genesis, in the biblical text that I was raised with, which would be the same as many other world religions practice, which is that there was this initial something. There was this initial moment of ignition, of let there be light, of something. Something happened, right? And everything began to spring forth from that. And the way that I see it, it really is, it's almost like, imagine like a star exploding, going supernova, but so much bigger. And instead of it going supernova and then collapsing into a black hole, obviously we're still it's so much bigger. So we're still in this expansion phase where we've started from whatever it was that we began as, which was not what we are now. And we have blown out into all of this, and we are now expanding. And the why, right? The why behind it. Why would such an essence, such a creator being, why would source energy do this? Because source energy to me is the purest and biggest desire, just potent desire that there is. And this essence of desire wished to express itself, wished to create, wished to explore, wished to know more. It contained everything, it was everything, and yet in doing this and creating all of this, my sense is that there's this ability to know itself and to learn more just by doing this. It's one thing to know something, because we have our own little micro experience of this, because it's one thing to know something cognitively, to know it in your head, to possess the knowledge. It's another thing to do it, to live it. So you can watch videos on anything, especially now. You can go onto YouTube, you can watch videos about anything, you can learn all kinds of things. But is that the same as actually doing the thing? Absolutely not. You can watch videos on skydiving. You have an idea of what that might be, but is that the same as feeling it, actually jumping out of the plane? Absolutely not. Not at all the same. You can watch cooking videos and look at all this beautiful food. Is that the same as actually preparing the food and then tasting it? Of course not. So that is my sense, is to like, the why behind it is like, it's one thing to know things. It's one thing to possess the knowledge and possess the essence. It's another thing entirely to like blow it out and make it into an actual experience. My understanding is that each of us are fractalized, teeny, tiny little bits of that same essence, of that same God frequency. And we are here doing what we're doing in this massive expansion and experimentation of like exploring, discovering, finding out things, which, it should be said, doesn't necessarily mean that all of it is joyful. So the question of like, well, bad things, unpleasant things, evil things, I think it's worth saying that if something is everything, if it holds the potential for everything, it holds the potential for everything. And so every bit of light, I'm just using shorthand here, every bit of light that exists would probably have an equal amount of darkness. And it's my understanding that at the upper point, like pure source energy, it's entirely neutral. There is no label of good or bad. It's just, there is all this energy. There's no labels on it. Now, this is where things get tricky, because source energy and our concept of who God is are often put together. They're often conflated. This is not how it works. Source energy is at the very top, the very beginning of all things, the all that is. There are, remember I said that there's so many beings, huge, massive, ancient. We can't measure time old enough, right? We've only been here so long. I believe that actually humans have existed in other ways, in other forms. And this is just one of our latest iterations. That's a topic for a whole other day. But anyway, there are these like eternal, ancient beings who do oversee things, but in the essence that they oversee things in order to assist the expansion, to assist growth, to assist discovery, not to assist with like punishment and judgment. Now, these beings also like they have ideas, they have desires, they have actual goals. Like, I'd like to see humans follow X trajectory. But let me make sure that I've been covering everything so far. I know this is super nebulous, is what I want to say. I think I'm doing okay. But this experiment in particular here on Earth has been set up with free will. This is so important. We have free will. We have set up an experiment here that is unlike many other experiments. And I don't even know if I can exactly like accurately explain all of the ins and outs of why this is so different. For the purposes of today's teaching, we'll just say this is different. There are realms, and it's impossible to comprehend because we are here in the realm of free will. There are places where free will does not exist. No. It makes us panic because free will is an integral part of our design. We cannot get around it. We can't do without it. There's no other way for us to be. So if you can't imagine not having free will, great. You are human. You are part of this experiment. There is only free will here. So when I say that like God has like judgment, it's not judgment the way the Christians talk about it, where it's like God is judging and sending people to hell. No. There are definitely things that like the being, it's not source energy, but the being who's responsible for us here, who oversees our world, who is the sort of like God figurehead that nobody, again, blind men with the elephant, nobody has actually fully seen and understood and described God, let alone source energy, right? That being has desires, has a trajectory they'd like to see us follow, and wants to assist, but is limited because this is an experiment of complete free will, no like divine intervention, no messing around with the free will, no exerting, powers here. Humans have to make decisions together, collectively. So, like, what do you suppose a being like that, if they wanted humans to like, just very simply put, and these are like the most basic teachings that exist on this planet, how many times have we been told to love one another? How many times have we been told to treat each other well, to be kind, to take care of those who need assistance, to not fucking kill each other, murder each other? How many times? It's in every sacred text. Can you just imagine the level of frustration? This is another, we have a false human concept where we think of very high deity as static, unmoving, very two-dimensional. Not true. Plenty of like feeling and desire and wishes, like wishes and desire, and like would like to see us actually live in peace on earth, like actually live in peace, but hands are tied because of free will. So this being and all the other souls, remember, there's so many souls. You think there's a lot of people living on this planet right now? Ooh, there's a vast collective of souls who assist with things here. I mean, honestly, everything is just so much bigger than I can possibly hope to convey, and even more than I can actually hold myself. So what would this being do in its like desire and even frustration that we keep fucking like killing each other, hurting the planet, abusing everything in our path? What would you do in that position? You'd send messengers. You would send messengers to keep telling people what they need to know. And each messenger would be slightly different. Each messenger would be sent to a different place. Each messenger would have a slightly different way of speaking the message based on where they landed, the body they were incarnated into, the time, the culture. And like each messenger was not necessarily, entirely infallible. There's been varying degrees of consciousness that have come in as messengers, have come in as assistants to humanity. And again, even with the messengers that have been sent, there is still a little bit of that aspect of like the blind men with the elephant, just getting part of things. And then what always ends up happening, the messenger does die or is killed. That happens. We kill our messengers, we kill our prophets. Some of them actually do live to an old age. And then the humans get a hold of the teachings. And what do we do with these sacred texts and teachings? We humanize them. We make our teachings, that the sacred texts that all say a lot of the same things over and over and over, we actually use them to support our division, our greed, our superiority, our abuse of each other, our abuse of the planet, our abuse of our, like, we live in the Garden of Eden. We live in paradise. This planet is so amazing. There are not a lot of other, well, I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of infinite places. From what I've seen, from where I sit right now, I haven't seen too many other places like this planet. And maybe there are elsewhere. I don't know. I certainly haven't been everywhere, right? What I do know is that this planet is exceptional and unique in the variety that we have here. Like, the creator went crazy with this planet. You have only to look at the animal kingdom and see, like, it's stunning. It's stunning. Like, if you don't go to an aquarium and begin to weep openly, or like, even better, if you can actually go snorkeling or scuba diving, if you sit there and try to like really be in that moment, be with all of what there is, and see how intricately balanced everything is here. Every single creation has a job. Every animal, every single blade of grass, every single molecule of dirt is put here and like has a job, has a part to play. And like, if that doesn't blow you out and make you just like weep openly, like, I'm trying to hold it back here so I don't just start like dissolving. Like, I don't know what else will. The place that we live is just beyond gorgeous. And we've had messenger after messenger after messenger, and a lot of them we've just fucking killed. And they've all said the same thing, which is that, like, there's another way to be. You don't have to have this bag over your head with this teeny tiny pinhole, with this teeny little, like, tiny perception of reality. There's so much more. And like, this creator, if you will, not necessarily source energy, which is like way out there, but like the beings that take care of us, take care of this planet, the beings that we call deity, that we call God, there's actually a desire to be in relationship with us. And no, it does not mean you need to like give your heart to Jesus and like, no. Again, like, humans took, it makes me crazy too, especially now that I can see. Humans took everything that was said and twisted it and made it into like rules, made it into constructs, made it into these tight, very clenched and constricting systems of being. And none of that is necessary, really. If people knew the true nature of reality, if they knew how powerful they are, if they knew how big and expansive they are, if they knew that this was just one of their many, many stops on an infinite journey of discovery and adventure, Like, how does that change things? How does that change things irrevocably if you actually try to like hold that? If you sit in that position and then live your life from that spot, doesn't that change everything? I mean, it would. It would. If more humans could actually conceptualize that even a little bit, sit in that position and live from there, everything changes. Everything changes and things get a lot more fucking fun. So, why do bad things happen? Bad things were not necessarily part of the design here. We decided we wanted full free will. We wanted to do things exactly our own way, however we wanted, with no intervention, hands off, buddy. And we decided at some point to develop the veil, to develop amnesia about who we are, why we've come here, and the infinite nature of everything. Well, that opens the door for a lot of things that were not necessarily meant to be part of the original plan. And people forget. We forgot. We have forgotten. Remember I said at the top, the number that I was just given, plopped in my head, 96%? 96%, let's just say, for the purposes of having a number, 96% of everyone on the planet is completely ignorant of this, of the larger picture. So they're not walking around perceiving the vast nature of everything that exists. They've forgotten who they are. They've forgotten who everyone else is, for that matter. And so they're moving from an extremely limited perspective, an extremely limited worldview, and bad shit happens from that spot. Bad shit happens from that spot. If you can't remember the divinity, the deity, the God frequency that you inherently are, and you can't see it in others, I mean, look at what we've done. Look at what is happening. Look at how we treat each other. It's very obvious, it's very evident that the vast majority of humans are not in touch with their infinite nature. Very obvious, very evident. It's everywhere. Do you think we'd be walking around with scarcity about our resources? Do you think we'd treat each other this poorly? Do you think anyone would be hungry? Do you think there would be any children seeking a home? Do you think that we would abuse and hurt? I mean, anything. Animals, the earth. If we knew who we really were and who everyone else, everything else was. I don't know. I can't say like a firm no, but I just really don't think so. I really think things would be so different. And that anything that wasn't that would be treated as such an anomaly with such immense like curiosity and care and compassion. Like, gosh, what must have happened to you to make you so broken, to make you so hurt that this is what you think we're about here? Can you imagine? I know this sounds like awfully Pollyanna, But that's how far we've come away from like the true nature of reality. And this is, a place where people get skeptical because they can't see further. And I get it. I get it. This is a very convincing. I really don't buy into like, well, this is all illusion. Okay, so like, yes, you could say that because this is just part of our experience as eternal beings. And no, you can't prove. No, of course. Nobody can prove that. Nobody can prove in a way that we can prove things that there is life after death, that there is anything after this. No. If you're somebody who's seeking like concrete evidence about something like that, you will never find it. I would suggest that you start by reading people's near-death experiences. And I would suggest that you start, pursuing these resources and these stories and see what that activates for you. But if you're looking for concrete evidence, you'll never find it because it doesn't exist. But this is what I know for sure. So you can either take it or leave it. And my question is always, okay, if this isn't true, if what I have shared and if what I have to say is not true, what is the alternative? There are alternatives. There's alternative stories, plenty of them. But like, do they make your heart sing? Like, okay, maybe we're in some experiment and the aliens are just like pulling the strings. Okay. Does that make your heart sing? Does that make you feel alive? Does that activate you? Does that awaken something deeper that you don't even really have a name for? Not me. What if nobody knows anything and we live and we die? If you want to be like completely like a complete nihilist about it, it's kind of sad though. And then of course, what if there is some like God who's this old man with robes and he's just there interested in punishing people, sending people to hell? I mean, honestly, hell doesn't exist. It's not real. We create hell for ourselves because we have free will. So there are people who live in hell, so to speak, of their own free will and volition, but nobody gets sent to hell as a punishment. There's plenty of people far more intelligent than me who can explain exactly where that idea came from and why it took off and who was pushing it and the mistranslations behind it, etc. What I will tell you is that we can choose how we want to live. And we can choose whether we want to live in heaven or hell. And some of us are choosing any number of places along that spectrum. Some people very much do choose to live in hell. But again, like, what is the alternative? If there's something that sounds better to you, let me know. But I actually believe that in all things, your objective is to take the most empowering perspective and claim it. I don't believe that we've been sent here to be like some lab rats in a machine. I don't believe that. I haven't seen, like in all of the dimensional traveling that I've done, all of the exploration and all of the people I've spoken to, both in bodies and out, I just have an immense amount of evidence personally that that isn't true. And if you don't, that is okay. This is the realm of free will. You can choose whatever you like. But to me, it comes down to what sounds better to you. Does it sound better that anything bad that happens here is the result of our own choices and our own free will, and that we could just as easily choose something else, anything else, and that there is no infinite retribution, infinite punishment, that actually everything has been set up here for our expansion, for our growth, for infinite experimentation, and that anything bad that happens here is a temporary experience, a temporary blip on the radar, and that it does actually matter. It's not that we bypass. It's not that we bypass and say, well, it doesn't matter. No. It does matter, because each being that you interact with here is a sacred part of the whole, is the same God frequency as you. And anything bad or wrong that's happening is people who are not in touch with that sense, people who have forgotten all of that. So what sounds better? That, which I've just described, does that sound better or more empowering? Or the idea that you've been put here to live once, to meet some rules, to die, to be judged, and to be sent to eternal reward or eternal punishment based on how well you performed in an experiment where you were never told the rules, where you were never told who you were, where you were never told this one option is for you, this one option isn't. And you've just been sent here as part of an experiment, perhaps, and you need to follow a very prescribed path in order to have a certain outcome. And that when bad things happen, it's either because you brought them on yourself, or some judgmental, wrathful God is sending them to you, or it's just random. It's just random, and no one fucking cares, and no one fucking knows, and bad things just randomly happen. Does any of that feel empowering? Does any of that like light you up? I think not. I think not. So for me, I'm going to choose the thing that's most empowering. You can choose, like you get to choose. You get to choose if you want to be disempowered. Totally your choice. I think it is more empowering to believe that anything that happens here is actually part of my evolution and growth as an eternal co-creator of my reality here. And that the people who are with me here are also eternal co-creators of our reality together. And we are here to teach each other and to learn, and that we have made a ton of mistakes as a species, as a race. And we've been told what to do to not do that hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. I don't know. I don't have like a head count for how many messengers have been sent here saying one thing or another. That all basically boils down to the same thing, which is to treat each other well and be grateful, love people. I actually think we have everything available for us to have a very different world than we do. And we aren't always choosing it. And it's very easy to like point fingers and say it's this person's fault more than it is mine. But honestly, it's really on everyone. Some people have a larger influence. Some people have a smaller influence. Everyone has influence. So it's better for me, and it's been immensely healing, to stay rooted in what is empowering, to stay rooted in what is so much bigger, and move from that space. It's not, I am far from perfect at this. I am very much human, and so are you. You can't, I mean, it's impossible to stay in this place all the time and really move from that. I mean, you'd be Buddha. I'm not Buddha. I'm not trying to be Buddha. Like, I'm gonna have lots of like really human experiences here, and that is the point, right? The point is that I do get angry, and so do you. The point is that we do hurt each other. The point is that, like, you know, these things do happen right now. And we can learn, and we can grow, and we can choose differently. We can do things differently. And the way to learn how to choose to do things differently is to embrace it all. Embrace it all. Embrace being human. Embrace being here right now. Embrace the mess. Embrace the imperfection. It's a paradox. By embracing the mess and the imperfection, you begin to see how everything is actually so beautiful. And there is perfection woven into everything, sometimes where you least expect it. So really, like the meaning of life, the why behind why we come here is because this is actually meant to be fun. Controversial thing to say in 2022. This is meant to be fun. And why are things happening the way they're happening right now on Earth in this way, yada, yada, yada. Same as everything else. It's a growth opportunity. An opportunity to step forward that we chose. We've been choosing growth, finally, as a species. Again, you're going to have to just agree to disagree or not believe me. But we made a choice. We said enough of the pain, enough of the suffering. Let's move from this place. Unfortunately, another thing that's kind of baked into our design for the moment is that we learn a lot by being made uncomfortable, by being in pain. And that is the thing. I mean, birth is a great example. It's not comfortable. It is, in fact, oftentimes painful. And there's a means to an end. And there's ways to handle it along the way. Like you can handle it in different ways that make it less painful or make it more painful. And birth is one of those paradoxical things where, like, the more you deepen into your inner world and your inner experience, and the more you breathe through it and you accept the sensations and you don't try to like tense up and fight them, the more you relax into them, the less it hurts. I speak as somebody who had a 30-hour unmedicated labor and delivery, not because I'm some special rock star, but because I desired that experience and I prepared for it. And it was exactly as everyone always said, the more I relaxed into it and accepted things as they were and stayed present, the less difficult and challenging each step of the journey became. Paradox. This has been a lot. I think we are a little over an hour now. I think this covers everything I meant to cover. And like I said, this is blown out from from what we've been studying in this group so far. But it was time. It felt like time. It felt like time to take a little break from some of the more human aspects of what we've been studying, like studying anger and studying boundaries. Important, very healing, very vital. And this is an equal, maybe more, I don't know. I'm leaving that up to personal opinion here. This is an equal part of the story. Is the story of our divinity, the story of why we are here, the story of how we got here, the story of like how we could do this whole thing a lot better than how we're currently doing it. The story that like you're actually meant to be empowered. You're actually meant to be empowered by who and what you are. And there's other ways to be. There's other things you can choose. There's other things we can all choose. And think very critically about your thoughts that are disempowering. Think very critically about teachers and anybody who wants to hand you something, hand you a belief that tells you you are less than or disempowered. I would think quite critically about that because I don't believe that that is true. I believe that that is an extremely limited perspective, and it's not coming from somebody who's in possession of a more expanded view. and there's always more. So I fully expect that my perspective will only continue to expand, as will yours. There's always more. That feels like a good place to end. Have a beautiful day. Thank you so much. I expect there will be a lot of questions as a result of this, or maybe not, I don't know, but I'm expecting a lot of questions. So feel free to put that in the comments, and I will do my best to answer all of those when we have our discussion call next time. All right. Have a beautiful day. Lots of love.